It will be 2 years in April. I witnessed one of my best friends in my hometown get murdered. I literally
Mm,
had to crawl from my bedroom all the way to the front door for Matt to help
oh
me to
God.
the car and then take me to the hospital. I've been taught that intrusive thoughts are kind of like birds flying on your head. You can't stop a bird flying on your head. If a blue jay came in and just plopped on your, like, you don't really have the reaction for that. However,
Mm-hmm.
you can prevent it from building a nest. Because the nest, you have to sit there and let it fester.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the show. Today I'm joined by my co-host and a very special guest, Jerome. Jerome is based in Florida and he has done a bit of group therapy. And for the month of February, we'll be diving deep into the topics of relationships and dating. And Jerome is our very first guest for this month. Jerome, do you want to quickly introduce yourself to our audience?
Of course, absolutely. My name is Jerome Bulluck. I am from North Carolina, but I do currently live in South Florida, West Palm Beach to be specific. So if you don't know anything about that, just imagine the house of mouse. I live behind it. I'm in his backyard. I have done a couple of group therapies in rehab and mental health facilities, meaning I would have a group of clients and we would either do a specific exercise or talk about a specific issue, anything that was troubling on their minds or something they knew they had to face as soon as they hit the outside world again.
That's awesome. So is that related to something that you do for work, or is it something you just do on the side?
So I did it for about 8 years. I am currently a agency title clerk, but I still use those skills absolutely wherever I go. It's amazing how when you become emotionally mature, how some situations can work for your benefit and how some situations can still be absolutely frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I'll give you one of mine. I'll put up my cards on the table. I'm a child at heart. If you take me anywhere and I see something glowing, I'm like, ooh, what is that? I want it. I want it in my hands now. So when
Mm-hmm.
people get to know me in the beginning, they kind of have this vision about me. However, when it comes to the flip side of that, like when situations get quote unquote, we'll say difficult. If you're having a difficult conversation, believe it or not, I'm the first person people call. I
Mm.
It is weird when it comes to deaths, tough situations. I am people. I get these once in a blue moon phone calls where people only call me when something's going bad, and I don't necessarily take that as a bad thing. For me, I'm their voice of reason. And everyone's
Yeah.
human, like I have my voices of reason because I can go off the deep end just like anybody else. However, it,
Mm-hmm.
it is an honor for me to have that. When people call me and say like, "Hey, I really can't outthink this situation. I just really need not necessarily a voice to tell me what to do, but someone to sit in the trenches with me." And because of
Yeah.
my life and the things I've experienced by myself, I not take it upon myself, but it is a duty to, if I
Mm-hmm.
see a situation like that, I can understand and empathize with it. And full disclosure, when you do that, I do tell the person, hey, I might not be able to fix the problem. Sometimes, the problem is financial. I need this amount of money to get this done.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I can't meet that for you. However, I can sit in the trenches for you. Sometimes it helps just to have another helping hand. And
Yeah.
for me, like I'm that type of person because of the techniques I've learned and the experiences of my life. Even if I don't
Mm-hmm.
like you, I will never disregard you as a
Yeah.
person I've had certain situations where people come to me and say, "Hey, I need help," and I'm not gonna lie, I don't like this particular person, but I can hold your hand long enough to get you to the right people.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never cast anyone on the wayside because there are a lot of people who could have done the same for me, but giving me an opportunity to better my life.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
on
And
that flip side too, there were certain moments in my life where, and even in reality, no one really could have. I'll give you the biggest example. It will be 2 years in April. I witnessed my one of my best friends in my hometown get murdered. So like in
oh.
that moment, there was nothing really anyone could do. I just really
Mm-hmm.
wanted someone in that moment to sit with me, and unfortunately, that didn't happen. And I had to learn how to deal with that by myself.
Yeah.
But I took that lesson of, if I see someone in this situation, they don't have to be alone. Maybe I was, but I can carry that light and say, hey,
Mm-hmm.
in this situation, I can prevent this. I can't save the world, but I can help in this situation. And sometimes helping in that situation is just sitting there, not even saying a
Yeah.
word. You just having another body sitting beside you sometimes is very therapeutic.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And sometimes you're just on call with a friend. It's better not to offer any solutions because you don't know their situation. But if you can just sit there and
Hmm.
listen to them and listen to their story and just let them blurt it all out and get it off their chest, and that I
Hmm.
find is very helpful. So I love that about you. And I want to dive into like your past relationships a bit because I think before the podcast you mentioned you had some challenging relationships that you had to navigate in your life. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So two really came up. The first one I told you about, which I'll get into in a minute, was the first
Mm-hmm.
relationship I had before going into my first treatment center. So I
Yeah.
I knew nothing about mental health. I knew about therapists, but I knew nothing about mental health. Knew nothing really about myself. And then the
Mm-hmm.
second one, I was really thinking about it, and I am Christian, so I've been praying for stuff to hit me this week, and another bad relationship did pop up. It can still
Mm-hmm.
happen. You can go to therapy, be okay, like learn the
Yeah.
tools, and still end up in a toxic relationship. And here's the kicker:
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't even have to be sexual. The
Yeah.
second toxic relationship I'm referring to was actually the roommate I had moving back into my hometown. So I've been living
Mm-hmm.
in Florida off and on for 10 years, and I've been moving back and forth to and from North Carolina. I moved back because my grandma had passed away, and the
Yeah.
only place I could find was a room for rent. And
Mm-hmm.
out of still healing for him, I won't say his name, um, but he was a very toxic roommate. I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
My friend Matt, the one that did pass away, I was a little pre-story. I had gallbladder stones I did not know at the time. So I would
Mm-hmm.
go through these pains where I would literally be crying, throwing up on the floor. I had no idea what was going on. Every doctor I went
Mm.
to see kept saying, "Oh, it's just ulcers. So here you go. Just have some Pepto, and you'll be good to go." And I'm like, "No, it's not that. I don't know what it is." So it was a day. It was hitting me really hard, and all I had was enough strength to call Matt, and Matt did show up.
Mm-hmm.
However, it
Mm.
was at the door, and he would not let Matt in. So I literally
Mm.
had to crawl from my bedroom all the way to the front door for Matt to help
Oh
me to
God.
the car and then take me to the hospital.
Oh wow.
And
Wow.
building
That's
building upon like that, that wasn't the only thing that happened either. It was a lot of times he had caught a DUI. I had a very
mm-hmm.
clean license. I just didn't have a car. So a lot of times I was driving him while he was drinking, which by all means is a good, safe practice.
Yeah.
However, he was on the verge of an alcoholic. I don't call people
Mm-hmm.
alcoholic. I let you identify yourself. If it looks like a duck and talks like a duck, you're probably a
Yeah.
duck. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if you're a duck, but I'm hearing you quack over there. If you what what I'm putting down. So a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
times it was a lot of frustrating situations because he would get
Mm-hmm.
obliterated in the passenger seat and just put me in
Mm-hmm.
very compromising situations, which was
Mm-hmm.
horrible.
Yeah.
But going back to the first relationship, my before the first journey, drugs and
Mm-hmm.
alcohol are a part of my story, but it's mainly
Yeah.
with the girls I was with. And
Okay.
I typically did choose drug addicts for women, not to use or abuse them. They actually used and abused me. It was because I was so low. I didn't have the courage to really talk to a woman I thought that was outside of my caliber. So
Mm-hmm.
I kept constantly ending up with these women, and I got sick of it. I knew I needed help mentally,
Yeah.
emotionally, and spiritually. And unfortunately, I knew even if I had gotten clean with my parents, anyone around me, I knew in my heart I needed an outside source.
Yeah.
So that's when I made the decision of putting myself in an inpatient facility. However, that took took a wing and a prayer. Once she figured out what I was gonna do, because I was sick of it. I went to her. I'm going here. I'm leaving you, and she was like, "Oh yeah, really?" And she was smart enough to take the spark plugs out of my car. So
Wow.
Oh.
for
Okay.
a week, for a week, I was kind of stuck in that situation. However, luckily
Yeah.
one day she woke up with withdrawals and
Yeah.
she couldn't drive that day. So she asked me to go get her cigarettes and Mountain Dew. And I was like, yeah, I will absolutely go get you those things. And that was about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
What I
Yeah.
did was actually took my car, drove straight to a friend's house and said, you got to take me to the airport. At
Mm.
that point, I had made the decision to leave North Carolina and come to Florida, and nobody was going to tell me no. I needed no one to tell me no
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I know that they did have their best interests at heart.
Yeah.
However, I knew for a fact I couldn't. I needed an outside source. I needed a fresh start. I
Yeah.
needed a complete reset. So I did. I ran
Mm-hmm.
away like a 3 or 4 year old. I left notes for my grandma, my mom. So by the time they figured out what was going on, I'm like, I'm already in Florida and it's too late. And
Mm.
Just packed your bags and left, right?
I did.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and I don't give myself credit enough for that. And I really don't say that a lot. I get a call from my uncle every month or so. And if I am down, if I feel down that month, he was like, I don't know anybody else that literally got on a plane to a place they didn't know and still made it out all right. And I'm like,
Mm.
yeah, you're right, you're right, and
No,
most
that's very
people I
hard to
know are
do.
still
Yeah.
staying in that home.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like
So
to have the mindset, to pull yourself out of that and even realize that you need to go out. It's very hard. Like most people would not be able to do that.
Mm.
And it's like, it's hard to like just get a flight and go to a completely different place where you don't know anyone and start a life there.
mhm.
So the fact that you were able to do that, like, takes a lot of courage.
I blame Wicked. I listen like the Defying Gravity.
Yeah.
I like Wicked before the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, that was my favorite song. And she took a leap of faith, and I was like, so am I. I I am uh I am not a Glinda.
Yes.
I'm the Green Witch all day.
I haven't heard or seen Wicked, so I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah.
The
I.
green witch is the wicked witch of the West, but in Wicked
Okay.
it's a prequel, so it's more or less a story showing you how society kind of pushed her to be the
Hmm.
wicked witch of
The which
the
she is.
West. So
Yeah.
right now with Wicked, they showed you kind of, if you went to go see the Broadway show, they showed you everything up to the intermission. So they showed her
Hmm.
leaving on a good note. She's basically pushing society away and say like, y'all can do y'all thing over here. I'm gonna be doing my thing, flying high, and if it's just be by myself, that's all right too. And I've
Hmm.
always loved and gravitated towards that song. However,
Okay.
in the back end, society still goes out and forces her to do the things she's going to do. But
Mm.
Hmm.
yeah, Wicked is the famous phrase: you either die the villain, I mean, you either die the hero, or you live long enough to
Oh.
become the villain. So right now, she
Okay.
didn't die as the hero. So now comes the
Yeah.
second part.
Yeah. Yeah.
So going back to that relationship that you left, is there anything that you learned
Mhm.
from it? And if so, what was it that you got out of it?
I learned about the big B word, and
Uh,
it doesn't rhyme with which. It
yeah.
actually is boundary.
Oh,
Yeah.
It doesn't rhyme with which.
yeah.
It is no boundaries is a very big word in my repertoire, and it's, if you're honest with yourself, it's something you can work on and go great lengths with, but it's one of the things you can be working on until the day you die. And what I mean by that, I don't want to say common, but with people I'm just starting to meet, setting boundaries is easy because like we're still getting to know each other. So while you're getting to know me, hey, don't cross that line.
Hmm.
With people you've known for years, I think that's where it kind of gets a little bit tricky,
Yeah.
especially
Mm.
if you allow someone to break the boundaries for so long. And now that you're trying to set boundaries for yourself, not only are you setting it for yourself, but you still have that reaction too from that other person. And nine
Hmm.
times
Yeah.
out of 10, that person is going to say, well, I've been doing it for 10 years. I've been doing it for 20 years. Why is it a problem now?
Yeah.
And
Mm.
sometimes it's all about, it is all about setting up boundaries in a safe and assertive way.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, when they set boundaries, soon as you cross the line, you get the angry guard dog.
Mhm.
A lot of people is like,
Yeah.
whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
So it's all about learning. Okay, this is my boundary, and if you cross it one time, I can't necessarily go Rambo on you, especially if you didn't know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Ignorance is bliss. So for a second, in truth, I've been taught that intrusive thoughts are kind of like birds flying on your head. You can't stop a bird flying on your head. If a blue jay came in and just plopped on your, like, you don't really have the reaction for that. However,
Hmm.
you can prevent it from building a nest, because to let it
Mhm.
build a
Hmm.
nest, you have to sit there and let it fester.
Yeah.
So that's how
Yeah.
I think of intrusive thoughts, especially when it comes
Okay.
to boundaries, because me, I am a very sensitive person. I'm very empathetic. And I don't like to use the word trigger because I have gone through traumatic experiences, but like set off.
Mhm.
Especially seeing Matt get murdered in situations I've seen. If I see something play out, yes, my heart is thumping. I immediately go back to that moment. This seems like this matches this. However,
Hmm.
those are intrusive thoughts. I can't let it build a force. So it comes,
Hmm.
and sometimes I can recognize it. Sometimes the intrusive thoughts is just crazy and like, okay, get that is way out of left field. Get out of here. However, the real ones, the ones where like this seems like the situation where Matt got hurt. Like I
Mm-hmm.
see yelling, I see hands moving, I see arguments.
Yeah.
I sometimes I have to recognize that bird because that is a sense of danger that I'm feeling. So I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to ignore that because I don't want to become null and void to that. Because when something really does happen, and I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, and then I'm going around the corner into immediate danger. You don't want to become
Mm-hmm.
completely numb, but you don't want to. I don't want to be that type of person. As soon as I hear a noise, like, oh, what is that? So sometimes when that bird flies in, okay, I see it. Okay, not entertain the idea, but more or less look at it as very logically. Try to
Mm-hmm.
debunk it, if you will. Because a lot of times it
Mm-hmm.
does. My intrusive thoughts go from 0 to 100. Oh, this is exactly like that moment Matt got hurt. Okay, let me think about
Mm-hmm.
this. Okay, I see people yelling, but I don't see any weapons. They're just having an argument, or sometimes it could not even be an altercation. You turn
Mm-hmm.
around and it's like, oh, it's people having a good time. But
Mm-hmm.
because of
Yeah.
stuff I went through, if my back is turned and I'm hearing certain things,
Mm-hmm.
my brain is automatic going, oh, yep, that's,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
it's, we learn about the facts about yourself. I know
Yeah.
I'm sensitive about, I know,
Yeah.
I'm very more in tune when I see stuff like that happen. So now that I know
Mm-hmm.
that about myself and I know I probably pour it on more than it should, I still get those feelings. I still get the heart race, but it's like a wave in the ocean. Emotions
Mm-hmm.
come in and then it fades out. And that's
Yeah.
the one thing that has kept me solid. It's
Mm-hmm.
learning.
Yeah.
If I get angry, I got angry a couple days ago with a
Mm-hmm.
situation, and
Mm-hmm.
the anger rose over me, and I'm like, I'm in the right. I could tell it. I can even say it. I have an e-bike. I take an e-bike to work. I take an e-bike everywhere I go. So I'm crossing the street, totally in the right. Car coming barreling towards me gets within 10 feet. And of course, like it's just the anger went from head to toe. I'm in the right. I have the right to rip this guy's ear off if I want. And
Yeah.
for that second, I had to let the wave wash over me, feel it, acknowledge it. However, that doesn't necessarily have to be my first response.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
feel even for me, until like I realized what I knew about intrusive thoughts, I really felt like I was playing dodgeball most of my life. Like, oh, here's another like situation. Now I gotta dodge that. Here's another feeling.
Yeah.
Oh, gotta dodge that. Now I
Yeah.
can react to life. Sometimes, with dodgeball, you can catch the
Catch the
ball.
ball. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, yeah, I still have to dodge because if something doesn't serve me spiritually, physically, or emotionally, I really don't need it. I I,
Yeah.
I met a individual a couple days ago, but it seemed like he was trying to put me onto a business opportunity, and it felt completely sketchy.
Yeah.
So I immediately was like, "Yep, nope, you're
Yeah.
you're on the." If I see him on the street, I have the courage and boundary enough to be like, hey, I didn't really like the opportunity you came up with me, so I decided to lose contact.
Yeah.
That
No.
is the most
Fair.
professional response I can give. If
Yeah.
someone takes that completely wrong, that's on their side of the street. Now, I said
Yeah.
something shouldn't hurt your feelings. That was very
Mm-hmm.
direct and it got my feelings across. And I put up my
Yeah.
boundary. For me,
Mm-hmm.
all of my
Mm-hmm.
green flags are lit for that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Nah, that's really great. Um, how how would you tell someone who's like struggling to set boundaries, like go about doing that in their relationships and in their life in general?
So the best thing to do is to start off small. I think when people start saying, hey, I want to set boundaries, they immediately go to their mom, their significant spouse, their brother, the person that they're closest to, and like, hey, this is boundary is you do not cross. And when you
Mm-hmm.
get, sometimes that works out, sometimes that person on the other end can be Oh, absolutely. I can see that. But most of the time, it's going to be that same response. What are you talking about? I did this for 10 years. Why are we changing it up now? So I
Yeah.
say start small. If someone on your outer circle, or maybe even a coworker, started, crossing a boundary you didn't like, and at the end of the day, that person doesn't pay your bills, or, I only see this person 3 hours, 4 hours out of the day, I would start there, because even if you get a negative response from them, you can learn how
Mm-hmm.
to not react, respond to it. You get practice in that, and then two, it's not neither a win or lose situation. You could, if you try to start boundaries with your wife starting off, you might end up in a win lose situation. Yeah, I won the
Mm-hmm.
boundary, but now I lost this because I was trying to stand up on it and I didn't really have a response to it.
Yeah.
So now
Mm.
I'm standing
Mm-hmm.
10 toes down because this is the only way I know how to cross. Instead
Yeah.
of having that practice, of learning how to compromise.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great way to start setting boundaries for yourself.
Hmm.
Um. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned at the maybe towards the start of the podcast that you were leading group therapy sessions. What was that like?
So every day it would be different. There would be sometimes in your life you do a group session and you feel like a deity. Like these people are hanging on to your every word. You're a guru. You're doing so much good. And then there's other days where that group you're gonna get nothing out of. All of them are just angry to be there. Serena
Mm-hmm.
Williams, I mean, not Serena, Venus Williams, who I just met today, could walk in and they'd be like, I still don't care because I hate being here.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
so it taught me a lot of humility, like everyone's a human being. There is a thing as a vibe, you know,
Mm-hmm.
4 people out of 5 could have a good vibe and change that one person perception for that brief moment of time. However,
Mm-hmm.
it could be the opposite way. You can have one patient come in, oh my gosh, like so and so looks like they're having a fantastic day, and then get into a group of 4 people that's just not feeling it, and then all of a sudden everyone's listening to emo, and I'm like, how did we get here? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it taught me a lot of humility and adaptability. At the end of the day, how I got most of the bad ones is like, look, we're here whether we like it or not. I'm here whether I'm
Yeah.
like it or not. We can use this, sit here and still be miserable, or we can use this
Mm-hmm.
time to improve. And I did.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I gave the group the choice, and sometimes they chose to be miserable, and I'm okay. I got
Yeah.
paperwork. All right, here we go.
Yeah.
We can do packets. And
Yeah.
people, and sometimes you gotta shock people like that. Most
Mm.
people are like, "Yeah, he's not gonna do it." What? Like, what?
Mm-hmm.
And the next time I came around, I asked the same question. Okay, we don't want to be miserable.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when you say we could either improve or be miserable, what do you mean by improve?
So when when you have a group session,
Hmm.
especially in rehabs and treatment, it's a lot of group input. It's not one person talking the whole time. So if a group is not really wanting to cooperate or do any input, a group can be dead. You can have the most best topic ever, how to deal with toxic relationships if you're still in one and you have to go back into one when you leave here. I heard that one time.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't in one at that time, but I
Yeah.
knew a couple of patients that were sitting on my left of me and sitting on my right of me. And I know you going back home to a husband you really don't like. And I know you going back to a wife that hits you. And, a lot of times it's not just simple as get up and go. Sometimes
Yeah.
you have to deconstruct, sometimes you have to go back. And that's why I say with toxic relationships, you take your time. If I feel like if you're in a toxic relationship and you're wanting to get out, but you feel stuck in a cycle, number one, if that was me again, I would feel like, what is the reason of what's keeping me here?
Mhm.
Sometimes it is
Mm-hmm.
like I have feelings for this person. Sometimes it's financial. Sometimes it's because that person and I have kids together. If so, I would write those things down and kind of jot a little bit. My therapist told me, he was like, well, what would it be like if you didn't necessarily have these things? Or if these things, if there were kids, for example, what would change if you were to break off that relationship with those kids? And not necessarily go off in the deep end. Time yourself for 5 minutes. You give 5 minutes to write whatever you want, but as soon as that buzzer goes off, you have to put the pencil down.
Mhm.
And that gives you
Mm-hmm.
enough time to get your true feelings out and like see how you would actually feel about that. And
Mhm.
then
Yeah.
beyond that, once you find the reason, you can start kind of counteracting it. For example, if it's financial, I've literally told somebody this, and I know it worked for her. She was with this guy, and she was saying she was still kind of with him because of everything financial. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
for the meantime, I know you want to break away, but you stuck here because of this, and I completely understand that the husband was
Yeah.
making buku's amount of money. So even though you're in a frustrating relationship, you're still used to a custom lifestyle. And even though you will want to scale back if you completely cut ties with them, you have absolutely nothing. I can completely be empathetic with that. But I told her, I was like, go get a Cash App card with your name. She was like, well, I can't even put money in it. I'm like, that doesn't matter. Like just start having these little twigs. If that's the only thing that's keeping you there, and she still had to quote unquote play the game because he was that type of person. If $1 went missing from that joint account, he would know. So but
Mm-hmm.
I still told her, I'm like, look, you go get that Cash App card, and then you figure out what else is essential for you to break off with this person. And as soon as you do that, you'll have at least you'll have a bank account. It might not be the best bank account that you want, but you'll have a bank account, you'll have a place. So we went into it further detail, but I told her to look for a room for rent too. And
Mhm.
eventually she did follow some of those suggestions. And she was able to get out of that. And I know she's
Mm-hmm.
forever grateful for that. Because if it wasn't for her putting the twigs for the fire, I should say,
Mhm.
putting these little things in place, I don't think she
Yeah.
ever would have been able to break off because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people think they have, even me included. I said it on the phone call. I blame JG Wentworth. That commercial is my money and I need it now.
Mhm.
And like
Mm-hmm.
I literally incorporated that to everything before therapy. It's my feelings that I need it now. It's my love and
Yeah.
I need it now. Like
Yeah.
I want to be away from this person and I need it now.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't work
Yeah.
like that. Sometimes you have to put twigs together, kindling for a fire. And,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that takes I've built plenty of fires in North Carolina, and sometimes that thing took a minute. Not because I had
Mm-hmm.
all the logs in place. I just needed the kindling for the fire, and it took forever to find good kindling.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. It can take time. Like, especially if you're in a bad situation, like you want to just cut it off, like clean cut off, but that's not how reality works, right? You have to
Mm-hmm.
just spend time to slowly distance yourself away from it and then try to actually be successful outside of that situation. Yeah, which can take some time and
Mm-hmm.
um, it takes like a while to get that done. But what I want to ask is like what first got you involved in group therapy, and like yeah, like what inspired you to continue down this road?
So how it all started was, of course, when I put myself into an inpatient facility, I knew
Mm-hmm.
I always wanted to help people. I just didn't know in what aspect. And
Yeah.
going through that and seeing people come in as sick as I was, even sicker, coming in with
Yeah.
all of these problems and coming out feeling better, doing better,
Yeah.
that gave me hope, inspiration. And I knew that I wanted to do that job for, if not forever, for a while. And I am so
Mm-hmm.
grateful that I took the opportunity. I took them 8 years to work in that industry because even now, I'm coming back from the fair in South Florida, and I saw a previous patient that I went through with, and then I was attacked with them later on. So it was cool to still see people 5 years down the road and be like, hey, like, like we might have been in that messed up place together, but look at us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
The stories you see, I kept working in it really for perception. I never really did it for
Mm-hmm.
the money. I did everything besides own a treatment center. I say that joke, but in reality, just about. But I did it for the people. I did it because I don't necessarily like gardening, but I like planting seeds. And I like putting an idea in someone and for me to get an equal interaction. By all means, like some of the stuff I spit now or I say didn't even come from a therapist. It came from a patient that I was attacked with, and this person sitting in detox and still telling me the most spiritual thing I've ever heard. It's just we all have our highs and lows.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the techniques that you incorporate helping people that are trying to overcome traumas and or are facing a difficult time?
So with that, you want to get a good toolbox. And we live in a world now where even with this podcast, we're dealing with three people in three different countries, which is amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We have such good equipment to get these tools. YouTube. I'm gonna spit a couple of techniques later. However, with these tools, you find out what works best for you. I'm pretty sure we're
Mm-hmm.
all three different people of different height, different strength, different dexterity. So we all three climb a mountain and we all have our equipment. None of our paths is going to look the same though. You're probably a little bit
Mm.
taller than me, so you're probably going to yeah, your length is going to be a little bit different from mine. If maybe in flat areas, because I have short feet, I'm closer to the ground, I can hike all day and maybe you get tired because of the elevation. All of our paths are going to get different and all of our difficulties are going to look different as well. However, the tools still remain the same and you use what tools are best for you. So if maybe I have spikes on my boots and you don't. Maybe I use the spikes in my boots for like difficult times. Maybe you use ice spikes that climb up walls. Where I would see a wall, I would walk around it. Both of them are good techniques that can be used, but both of them are used with different tools.
Mhm.
And it's more. I use the Karate Kid phrase, like the wax on, wax off. And
Yeah,
what
yeah.
I mean by this, you learn the basics, and as much cliche as they sound, when you do them, some people do a mental pause, take it away, like literally sit, close their eyes, and don't move for 3 minutes. Completely have a like a pause game from life. For me, that doesn't really work for me. I like meditations. I
Okay.
like positive affirmations. But however, so I literally know this person, and this person is the most peaceful person on earth. And you would think they would literally say peaceful, like positive affirmations when they wake up and when they go to sleep. But they actually
Yeah.
hate it to the core of their being.
Really?
They do meditation, but like
Okay.
that's their tool. You know, for me, positive affirmations work because I'm very cynical. I can be, and it challenges my cynical, my, me being cynical. And
Mm.
what I mean by this, and like I'll tell you the last one I did, because I wasn't necessarily feeling bad about myself, but I was in a grumpy mood because I with me having my gallstones removed. If I don't wake up and eat breakfast, I can literally get hangry. Like I didn't think that word. Like I thought that was just a mode or like just a simple feeling. Like no, like I know what hangry feels like now. And
Yeah.
so I was hangry that day, and like people kept coming in, and when it hits a certain point, I become nonverbal. I'm like, don't talk to me until I've had
Yeah.
a coffee
Yeah.
or and
Oh
like
God.
people were still just trying to come and talk, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
Not feeling it.
this ain't
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I literally can, remove. I can look at my boss and be like, look, I need 5 minutes. And for me, it's sitting there doing positive affirmations, and while I was doing them, it gives me a challenge to kind of be rude. Like you tell yourself you're a lovely person. Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I'm not lovely. And like as the positive affirmations go on, eventually me being cynical gets tired. And like eventually,
Mm.
like I get tired. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not that bad of a person. Like 5 minutes,
Mm.
like within that 3 minute mark, I guarantee you, even the most cynical person is like, okay, like I can agree with that. I can agree with that. And
Yeah.
and sometimes even if that specific technique doesn't work for you, there's completely others. Ones that completely evolutionized my life is actually Stoic principles. I read upon Stoic principles and I actually practiced three of them. The first
Okay.
one is waking up at least 30 minutes before you want to wake up. So I try to go beyond my body is actually attuned to waking up around 6:30 at the latest. I don't have to be at work till 8:30. It takes me 5 minutes to get to work on my e-bike.
Okay.
However,
Mm-hmm.
because of these Stoic principles, I can wake up. And if I wake up feeling any type of way if I have a hangover from the feelings of yesterday, I have plenty of time to get that out.
Mm.
I get to
Mm.
work super early, and guess what? If I want to cry, I can cry. If I want to be like, I don't want to be here, I got plenty of time to be like, I don't want to be here. And by the time I get all of those feelings out, I'm like, okay, I'm normal. Hi,
Yeah.
Cheryl.
I'm
Let's get
back.
to
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
God. That's really interesting. Yeah.
With learning about Stoic principles, like doing stuff and doing stuff intentional, being aware all the time was one I hated. Because I was like, I have to be because for me, I do have ADHD, and it's weird to explain,
Mm.
but I can really have a conversation with someone, and they can say, for example, who's that guy in that Blade movie? And we all know it's Wesley Snipes, but let's say, God forbid, I forgot. I can literally continue the conversation, but in the back of my mind, I'm literally going through files and like looking up actors' names. I'm like, nope, not that guy. Nope, not that guy. Oh, it's
Yeah.
Wesley Snipes. And then like literally I come back to my like the forefront of the conversation. To be like, yeah, that was Wesley Snipes you were looking for like 4 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Mm.
And he was like, you were
Yeah.
still on that? I was like, bro, I
Yeah.
was in the back looking at all of my files. Like I don't
Uh, yeah.
and I thought I was for a long time I knew I wasn't the only person that can do that, but I thought I was weird for being able to do that
Mm.
so
Mm.
freely.
Yeah. No, I'm really bad at multitasking. Like, I can only focus on one thing at a time. So if I'm talking to someone, I need to just pay attention, or else like I'll just not be able to think. So it's cool that you can do that.
I guess, but then I think for people with ADHD, they wish they had something like you. They wish they could
Uh,
focus. Yeah, just from what I know as well, all my friends that have ADHD, they're like, oh man, I wish I could focus. My minds keep drifting here and there,
mm,
and yeah.
So my mind
yeah.
definitely drifts.
Mm,
Most of the
yeah.
time, I have a technique. I listen to podcasts or the news at work while I'm working.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
my interactive person can be like, this is something that not that distracts. Yeah, it's something to
Mm.
distract my ADHD. And like instead of like
Mm.
doing this, you go watch TV for a little bit, like
Yeah.
while I'm here work.
That's great. That's so crazy. Um, yeah. I want to go back to relationships a bit because, yeah, one of the things you mentioned is being vulnerable in a relationship in our previous conversations. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what does vulnerability mean and how can people practice that in their day-to-day lives?
So what vulnerability means to me, sharing something or being able to receive something makes you not on the equal level, but make you feel human. And I'll give you an
Mm-hmm.
example about being vulnerable. The cigarettes I smoke at work is because a Colombian guy that doesn't speak a lick of English, like he always comes around the corner and goes, "Hey, my friend," and I go, "Hey, my friend," and we use this translator app, to get by. And
Yeah.
with vulnerability in that is, do I bypass the cigarettes? No, but like I take the cigarette, and if he wants to have a conversation, by all means, I'm going to have a conversation. I'm going to be vulnerable enough to share my information with him because who knows where this guy is. I couldn't even fathom being in a country not being able to speak the main language. And yet, but it
Mm-hmm.
is South Florida. You have spots where, you don't need it. But however, I've never been in a situation like that. And I
Mm-hmm.
hope to be. I got my passport. I'm ready to use it. I'm ready to get out there too. But
Yeah.
to live in there, is a big step. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I always want to be vulnerable enough with him to be like, if he's having a bad day, we're going to use the translator app and we're going to work it out. And it's funny how
Mm-hmm.
me and him became friends. I was sitting in the courtyard and I have a wireless speaker. So I was playing songs and he was like, "Oh, good musica." And ironically enough, Hakuna Matata, the song from The Lion King, came on. He didn't know any songs beforehand, but he knew Hakuna Matata, and he started singing the Spanish version, and we were sitting there
Oh, that's so
jamming
cool.
Hakuna Matata. So like that's how our friendship became like he became to be. I would look at him and I'm
Yeah.
like Hakuna Matata. I was like, we might not know many words between each other, but we know Hakuna Matata.
Yeah.
and, and being vulnerable too is also sharing information and being good at sharing vulnerable information, but having the power of knowing when and where to share. That is
Mm.
very key. I feel me doing group therapy, I think that's where I see a lot of people kind of make the mistake. They're kind of like Drake. We're either 0 to 100. Either you get nothing
Mm-hmm.
or you get all of my vulnerability. You know,
Yeah.
and that's you got to learn a good balance. For me, I am vulnerable with everyone I meet. I'm an open book. You want to talk about my past? I'd rather you hear it from the source than hearing it from somebody around the corner. So here you go. But I understand that everyone's not on that level yet. However, you
Mm-hmm.
can still be vulnerable, giving an experience that happened in your past that's not going to have any weight on you. Like you, I feel like we can admit our fault, and I will say this much. Me saying something vulnerable about myself does two things. It really makes you, see me as a person. Here I'm not perfect. Here's my
Mm-hmm.
faults. However, kid coming from my mouth, I kind of take power away from you, especially if you know the
Exactly. Yeah.
story in itself. Before I learned tricks and the tricks and trade about being vulnerable and sharing and when not to share, I found myself in a situation a lot with family members of being vulnerable, telling them too much, and then them taking that information and hurting me with it, down the line,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
like they'll hold on to it forever. I didn't, I was vulnerable about something I did to my grandma, when I was not doing great. Someone held
Mm-hmm.
on to that for years. I was being vulnerable with them. I'm like, hey, I done messed up too. Here's what I did to my family. And then down the road, that person held on to it. And no one knew in my family about what happened with that situation. But then they turned
Yeah.
around and went to my family, and tried to ruin my reputation because they were angry. So
Mm.
that is when I kind of learned the lesson of I need to know when I need to be vulnerable and like on what level I need to be. Because I can share 100% of the story. Give you all my feelings, all the actions, especially if I know. I love it. I love being vulnerable with people I'm never gonna see again. I'm like I can tell you everything because guess what? It's not gonna matter. I'm never gonna. You're gonna be my priest in a confession booth. Like let's go.
Yeah.
Like however,
Mm-hmm.
there to me there's certain it's levels to it. With certain family members, even with my mom, I'm vulnerable. I hold nothing back. However, when it comes to certain situations and certain people, I gotta remind myself that she's a human being too. So like if I
Mm-hmm.
say something about a particular person, especially if they have history or something in the past, I don't want her to get upset or anything about that. So
Yeah.
it's all about practicing, like using my words correctly and thinking about
Mm.
the situation and thinking about what I'm going to say before I speak. Like, especially if I want to be vulnerable with you, like get a feeling across, if I'm feeling frustrated, sad, I want you to get that effect, but I don't want to give you so much information where you can hurt me either. Because there are
Mm.
some people that do that.
Yeah.
Like they'll the I call them the silver linings, and for me, I hate a silver lining. I really do. I'd rather it just be silence than, yeah, this is bad, but for me, I heard my granddad used to say everything that comes out of butt is just something that needs to go in the toilet. So if I'll give you a perfect example. I've been in situations at work where I know if I give this person information, they're never going to forget it, and the whole office is going to know. So, however, if you walk in and you see them having a bad day, like if you see them going through like a rough situation, I'll give you. I remember one time at a restaurant, Zach person type. If I say anything, my manager's gonna know. The CEO of Cracker Barrel is gonna know in about like a day after I say it. Unfortunately, she had someone that passed away.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people were going to her and was telling them their experiences
Yeah.
because they know as soon as they tell them, she still might be going through it, but the whole restaurant is still going to know tomorrow.
Yeah.
So for me, I had to go and I sat down and talked with her and I gave her enough of my experience for her to use it wisely, to give her the situation. But I didn't give her everything because it was a small town. I didn't want exact details of the whole situation to get out
Mm-hmm.
because, I didn't want the telephone game to happen either.
Yeah.
So and so say this, and then all of a sudden it's a different story on the other end.
Yeah.
You, so in that situation, I had to kind of sit and really think about what I was going to say.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, hey, like first of all, I don't say I know how you're feeling because we're two different souls, different hearts.
Mm-hmm.
How you feel not necessarily might not how I feel in that
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, I'm here for support. Let's if you're willing to talk about it, let's talk about it. And she was. So I
Mm-hmm.
was able to kind of go in and tell her a bit of my story, but with leaving certain details out. She didn't need to know
Yeah.
example B, example C, because I know she's gonna tell that to my aunt Laura or whoever, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's all about practice, and I say start being vulnerable in a safe place. You know, most
Mm.
people it could be church. Some people it can be specific recovery meetings. If you never
Mm-hmm.
heard of Alan, well, if you ever heard of Al-Anon, you know Al-Anon is a good place. You want to get a good place where you you feel safe enough to share,
Yeah.
you know, and that's how you can start practicing it. And
Mm-hmm.
then once you get okay with it,
Yeah.
then you can start using it at work. You know, if I,
Mm.
for example, there was a situation that happened a couple months ago where I almost lost my job. You know,
Mm.
I said I was being vulnerable with someone, and you know, it started off as a non-professional conversation, and it got way off on the deep end, and I said something that was kind of misunderstood by her. And like,
Mm.
but because of the words and the way I said them, you know, you could easily flip that to be hurtful.
Mm.
Mm.
So in that situation, you know, I had to apologize and just kind of wait for the situation to blow over.
Yeah.
It's
And
kind of
however I
clarifying as well,
wait,
right?
yeah. So but I let time go by, but then I sat and had a conversation with the person that I did offend one on one, and was able to be vulnerable with that person. I'm like, hey, this might not change the way you look at me, you
Yeah.
know, but this is what I really meant, and you know, I'm sorry for offending you.
Mm-hmm.
And I shared a little bit about my experience of verbal abuse, and all the abuse I went through, and we were able to find a common ground and start building upon that now. You know, at
Yeah.
work, unfortunately, she's leaving, you know, next
Mm-hmm.
month. But you would have thought we were brother and sister now, you know.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nah.
So we've been talking for quite a bit already. So I kind of want to move on to the closing section.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
so yeah, first of all, thank you for being so open to us about everything as well. We really appreciate that. We got to get a glimpse of your story, so that's awesome. So what are your next steps? Where are you taking life from here on onwards in Florida? What are your plans?
So my next steps are little small story. Believe it or not, I met the chef from Below Deck, Rachel. She was the chef on season 8. And
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
before meeting her, it was right before New Year's. I prayed. I was like, I want a new career where I'm more financially secure and I'm enjoying it, and I
Yeah.
want to do comedy.
Yeah.
Funny enough, she works on super yachts and she does comedy.
Oh.
So she told me about the STCW, which is a course you get, and once you pass that course, you're allowed to work on super yachts and cruise lines. And she also gave me a packet to write a 5 minute set, which I am proud to say I am almost done. I really want
Wow.
to take it to a workshop before I do stand up, but I have jokes written down. I have them in my book. I have them
Yeah.
set up, and I'm ready to do it. I'm just wanting to put the finishing touches on it. And
Yeah.
then yeah, next year I want to be working on cruise lines. My ultimate goal is maybe do comedy on
Awesome.
That's
them.
so cool. That'd be great. Yeah. I've done a bit of comedy at university, and it's a lot of fun. And I think you're a very charming person, so I think you'll have a great time in it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the other question you want to ask is, what advice do you have for someone who might be in a bad relationship or a toxic relationship? And yeah, just any advice you can offer in general.
Well, first, if you really thought about that question when he asked it, take a deep breath. Like I said before, write down the feelings of why you're still there. You know, whether that be financial or the heart, the mind, shoot, sometimes even the body. Um, and give yourself 5 minutes, set a timer, and write down what would it be like without that person or without those things in specifically. And if you feel like in there, that will give you a baseline of where you need to start. I will never say sit in a toxic relationship. You know, start getting that kindling to start the fire. You know, to
Mm-hmm.
slowly break away. Because if you try to do everything at once, two things are gonna happen. You're gonna stay away from that person, but you're gonna end up not miserable, but especially if you're married, have joint accounts, you're breaking away from everything, all at once. And then you're going to either feel really upset or you're going to have a rough time.
Yeah.
Allow yourself time. I've learned that's why I'm taking my time with the SCCW. I'm giving myself one last good year in Florida
Yeah.
before I do this so that way I don't feel rushed into a relationship. I've learned that lesson myself the hard way. I'm treating my life now like I'm in a constant relationship with myself. I don't want
Okay.
to rush into this. I want to build upon it and get into it. But now another thing I want to say about toxic relationships is if you feel like you are in one, definitely seek out outside guidance, whether that be therapy, a social worker. You definitely want a third opinion for them to look at it and kind of give you more insight because our perception is just going to be our perception alone. if
Yeah.
if I'm looking at a hill or if I'm looking just one way, not going leaning or anything like that, I have blinders on. I'm only looking at one specific goal. If I
Yeah.
have someone on the outside source, that person can walk around me and be like, you don't want to go down that way. Too many red flags. Make
Yeah.
that U-turn.
Yeah. Yeah. Nah, I think those are really good points. Is I think first exercise would help you figure out what your true feelings are, and then second one,
Mm-hmm.
it's always good to get friend's opinion or outside opinion,
Yeah.
because sometimes you can just feel really strong emotions and they might cloud your judgment. So it's good to have that grounding step before you take any major actions. So I think that's great.
Yeah, definitely. And also make sure you have friends that don't judge you. Um, and you can be vocal and just, they're there for you and listen to you. And yeah, I think for sure.
Absolutely. If anyone listening plays Fortnite and you just want to vent, feel free to add me.
There we
We'll,
go.
we'll play Fortnite and talk it out.
That's a great way.
That's
That's a great way to do it. The question we love to ask our guests is like, because both Tong and I, we love reading. So, do you have any book recommendations or podcasts you love to listen to that we can, check out?
Yes. So, I actually have a book. It's called Questions Jesus Asked, is what I'm currently reading right now.
Okay.
okay.
And it really does go into the gospel. I'm religious, but not super duper religious.
Yeah.
However, these questions still ask about, well, who are you as a man or woman? Who are you as a being? Who are you as a neighbor? Who are
Mm-hmm.
you, as a person? What are you doing, contributing, not necessarily to society, but to the world? How are you going out and leaving the world a better place?
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
So the book is called Questions Jesus Asked. I actually
okay.
have it in my book bag if you want to see it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
sure. Have a quick look. But yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yep, it's by Marguerite R. De Vega.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. All
Questions
right.
Jesus asked.
We'll check that out. Um, yeah, okay. Well, finally, is there anything you would like to share with our audience? This could be anything from your um, page, if you have one, a website, if you have one, or just like any way to reach out to you.
So I do have my Facebook. That is Jerome Bulluck. Bulluck. I
Yeah.
have my email, which is my first and last name 68 at
Okay.
gmail.com. and I do have a Twitch. I haven't done my first stream, but I do have a Twitch called a Black Guy Plays Games because my
Okay.
gamer tag is literally a black guy. So every time I shoot you, it's like you got killed by a black guy, and I'm not gonna lie, I laugh. Or like when you kill me, it's like you kill a black guy, and I'm like,
Oh,
ah.
That's crazy.
yeah.
So yeah, that's my Twitch name. A black guy plays games. I play mostly role playing like adventure games because
Yeah.
I how I play games is how I am now. I feel like I'm in there, so like if I
Yeah.
play a scary game, like no, I'm jumping out of my seat too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Awesome.
Well, it was
Cool.
great
Well,
talking to you, Jerome.
yep.
And yeah, we wish you
Absolutely.
all the best with your career in comedy, and maybe you'll be working on some super yachts soon. So yeah, all the best with
Yeah,
that.
hopefully. I'm shooting for Below Deck season 20. That's my goal.
Okay. Yeah,
There we go.
that's great.
Thank you for the time, and it's been a pleasure. I had a blast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
likewise. Thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one. See ya.